What's up, YouTube? This is 8210. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about Zelmo Beaty. Now, Zelmo Beaty was born October 25th, 1939, and he was born in Hillster, Texas. Now, growing up, he was actually a Zelmo Beaty Jr. His father instilled in him a pretty strong work ethic growing up, and he grew up in a small town about 250 people. He attended Scott High School in Woodville, Texas, and played for Coach John Payton, winning back-to-back Prairie View Interscholastic League 1A state championships in 1957 and 1958. For college, Beatty attended Prairie View A&M, which Prairie View A&M is a very, very small school. And from 1958 to 1962 at Prairie View A&M, Beatty averaged 25 points and 20 rebounds per game and was a two-time first-team NAIA All-American 1960 and 1962. The Big Z led Prairie View A&M to the NAIA National Basketball title in 1962. It was named the Chuck Taylor Tournament MVP. Funny hearing Chuck Taylor, what NBA players, wear Chuck Taylors anymore. But those were the classic basketball shoes back then. You kind of got to think prior to everybody wearing Jordans or LeBrons. It was all about Chuck Taylors back then. So anyways, his college that he went to, Prairie View A&M University, there's only two players in NBA history to ever make it. Him and Guy Manning. Guy Manning only played 2 seasons in the NBA, or the ABA, I should say. But anyways, Zelmo Beaty would go on to the NBA. He was selected with the third pick in the 1962 NBA draft by the St. Louis Hawks. Now, the Hawks, oh man, I've mentioned this a lot. They were a very underrated team in the late 50s, early 60s. Very deep, guys like Bob Pettit, Cliff Hagan, later on Lenny Wilkens, Bill Bridges, these Lou Hudson. These teams had a lot of talent, And so sometimes I think the individual players will kind of get lost in the shuffle because of how deep these teams were. And you see that a lot with these 1960s teams because when there's less teams in a league, it means those roster spots are only getting the best players. And so this is why teams back then were very deep. Now, when he came into the NBA, his first season, 62-63, he didn't make an initial impact. He put up 10.2 points per game and 8 rebounds. And like I said, that's a lot of it because of the playing time he was fighting for. But as the 60s would go on, his numbers would keep going up. So 64, he would improve to 13 points. 64-65 season, 16.9 points per game. Then by the 65-66 season, he'd make his first All-Star appearance, putting up 20.7 points per game, 13.6 rebounds per game, and his field goal shooting would improve tremendously. He started to gain weight, get stronger, learn how to bang down in the post more. So his Hawks team didn't have a lot of success as they did in the late 50s. To give you an example, 63-64, for example, his team would lose in 7 games to the San Francisco Warriors. Wilt Chamberlain on the Warriors just manhandled them. And like I said, these teams were good. Bob Pettit, Cliff Hagan, Zelmo Beaty, Richie Guerin, Lenny Wilkens, Bill Bridges. That 63-64 team was probably In my opinion, the best team that had Zelmo Beaty in the Hawks era. But he would keep losing. 67, he would lose again. And Zelmo Beaty was getting older, and he only made 2 All-Star appearances on the Hawks. Like I said, 66 and 68. And in 68, he'd put up 21 points and 11 rebounds per game. And the team would go 56 and 26. Now, I know I said that other team was the best, and I meant from a roster standpoint, how deep they were. 68 had a better record, but I don't think they were as deep. Bob Pettit was no longer there. Cliff Hagan was no longer there. So this team was led by Zelmo Beaty. He's now officially the best player on the team. No more Bob Pettit. And Lenny Wilkins stepped up. He was putting up 20 points and 8 assists. They had guys like Joe Caldwell, Bill Bridges, Paul Silas, Don Ohl, Lou Hudson. Still a deep team, but in my opinion, it just wasn't as deep as the other one. But what happened to this team? They would lose again to the San Francisco Warriors. This time being in the first round in 6 games. What an upset that Warriors team did. The Hawks should have definitely won that series. But it is what it is. Zelmo Beaty and the Hawks would then move to Atlanta in the 68-69 season. And this would be his final season in the NBA. So what happened was, let me put it in a modern context. During the time, there was a new basketball league emerging called the ABA. And the ABA was actually not like a small league compared to the NBA. Yes, they didn't get the revenue the NBA did, but the ABA still had a lot of fans, still had a lot of support, and they were able to get players from the NBA to jump ship. Picture that in 2022. Imagine if there was a basketball league today that emerged and say guys like, I don't know, Kawhi Leonard go play on that team, go play in that league, or LeBron goes over and plays. It dilutes the talent, kind of, so to speak. But anyways, he went over and signed with the ABA. He signed a contract with the Utah Stars. Now, this infuriated the St. Louis Hawks, or Atlanta Hawks at this point, because the Hawks were like, yo, you have a contract with us. You got to fulfill it. So they took him to court over this. And he was legally barred to play in the ABA for 1 season. So the 69-70 season, he was not allowed to play. So he didn't play in any other league. So his first official debut in the ABA was in the 70-71 season, and his numbers would go up rebounding wise. He'd average 15.7 rebounds per game, 22.9 points per game. And he would lead the Utah Stars to the ABA championship. They would defeat the Kentucky Colonels in 7 games. And Game 7 would end 131-121. And Zelmo Beaty himself would have 36 points and 16 rebounds. So he's officially a champion. And I want to note, too, the Utah Stars had Bill Sharman as their coach. He was a great coach. And in 72, man, these Utah Stars teams were good. They would go 60-24. I know what you're thinking. 60-24 sounds weird, right? Well, the ABA didn't play 82 games a year. They played 84. And they would lose in 7 games to the Indiana Pacers. Now, the 72-73 season, they would go 55-29. They would lose the ABA Western Divisional Finals to the Indiana Pacers. So they were never able to recapture their championship that they got in 71. Same thing in 74, they made another ABA finals run, but they would lose in the finals to the New York Nets. And Zelmo Beaty in that series would actually average just 14 points and 8 rebounds. He was starting to decline as a player as he was getting older. And his averages for the season that year were 13 points and 8 rebounds. So age was starting to catch up with him. And he would leave the ABA to go back to the NBA at this point. Because the ABA was folding. And by 1974, during his final year with the Stars, Beaty was severely hampered by knee injuries, having undergone 6 surgeries on his knees during his career. Beaty retired in 1975 with a combined ABA-NBA totals of 15,207 points and 9,665 rebounds. He was briefly served as coach for the ABA's Virginia Squires. Like I said, that year that he would coach would be the ABA's actual final year, I believe. Like, the ABA would actually fold and go into a merger with the NBA. So 75-76 was their final year. And I mentioned he went back to the NBA. He actually signed with the Lakers. And he would only play 17 minutes per game, putting up 5 points and 4 rebounds. Kind of like a backup center position, So that was it. That was his career. And if you consider the ABA and NBA like you combine accolades, because I know the NBA doesn't really recognize the ABA, but I'm going to for the sake of this video. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a 5-time All-Star, and that's including both leagues. He's a 1971 ABA champion. He's a 1963 All-Rookie, and he's a 2-time All-ABA. He's ABA All-Time Team. So what happened to him after he was playing? Well, after pro basketball, Beaty worked in financial planning. He also worked as a substitute physical education teacher in the Seattle public schools. And it's unfortunate because Beaty died from cancer on August 27, 2013, at his home in Bellevue, Washington. He was only 73 years old. He had been married to his wife for 50 years at the time, and he had 2 children. Now, Beaty was actually selected into the 2014 National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame class and the 2016 Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame class. So he was inducted posthumously into the Hall of Fame. To me, that's kind of some bullcrap. I think he should have been in the Hall of Fame much sooner. And host John Levin ends every episode of the Slate Sports podcast Hang Up and listen by saying, "Remember Zelmo Beaty?" This is a reference to the appearance by Shaquille O'Neal on The Late Show with David Letterman, in which the host asked O'Neal about several centers from earlier eras. And O'Neal did not know about Beaty, even though Beaty made significant contributions to the game and on and off the court. Now, and that's true. A lot of people have forgotten Zelmo Beaty. Sometimes people just think the 60s is just Wilton Russell as far as centers go. But Zelmo Beaty himself was a 6'10" center. And he gets lost in that shuffle. People remember the winners. They remember Wilt. They remember Russell. To a lesser extent, they remember Nate Thurmond. But rest in peace, Zelmo Beaty. Let me know what you guys think down below. Thanks for watching.